Scientists examined this ancient relic under a microscope and reported something extraordinary: human heart tissue. But the strangest part wasn't what they found. It was how old the relic was supposed to be. Nearly 1,300 years old. So how did human heart tissue end up inside an Italian church nearly 1,300 years ago? The answer begins with a priest who had begun to doubt. According to church tradition, around the year 750, a monk stood at the altar in Lanciano, Italy. He knew the ritual by heart. Every word, every movement, every prayer. But somewhere along the way the words had become just words. He wasn't sure he believed anymore. That morning he reached the most important words of the Mass. His voice was steady. His hands were not. He said the words anyway. And then, something changed. The thin wafer in his hands was no longer what it had been. It had weight, texture. He looked down and couldn't understand what he was holding. Then he looked at the chalice. According to the traditional account, the wine had changed too. The blood had separated into 5 solid clumps. 5. Not 1. Not 2. 5. And for centuries, those 5 pieces would remain in Lanciano. The material was preserved as a relic. Generation after generation, people came to see it. And somehow the relic remained. But nobody could answer the question that mattered most. What exactly was it? Then, in 1574, church officials recorded another strange detail. They weighed the 5 clumps. Each one was a different size. Yet the surviving account reported the same weight, 15.85 grams. 1 clump. 3. Or all 5. According to the record, the scale returned the same number, 15.85 grams. But there was a problem. That was a historical record, not a modern scientific experiment. The mystery remained. Then, nearly 4 centuries later, the relic entered a modern laboratory. In November 1970, the Archbishop of Lanciano authorized a scientific examination, with permission from Rome. The man chosen for the examination was Dr. Odoardo Linoli, a professor of anatomy, histology, and clinical chemistry. His task wasn't to prove a miracle. It was simply to examine the samples. For months, Linoli studied what had been preserved. Then, on March 4, 1971, he presented his findings. And the result was extraordinary. Linoli reported that the tissue was cardiac muscle, human heart tissue. He identified structures consistent with the endocardium, the inner lining of the human heart. Then came the blood. Linoli reported that it was human blood, type AB, an uncommon blood type. He also reported protein patterns consistent with fresh blood. That was remarkable for material believed to have been preserved for centuries. But this is where the science has to stop. The laboratory could examine the tissue, could describe what it appeared to be, but it couldn't determine how the tissue came to be there in the first place. That question belongs to history, theology, and belief. Linoli's findings were published in 1971. The relic has remained the subject of devotion, investigation, and debate ever since. Some see the findings as consistent with a Eucharistic miracle. Others remain unconvinced. And then there is another intriguing connection: the Shroud of Turin. Researchers have reported AB blood and stains associated with the shroud. But that identification has been disputed. So the connection is intriguing, not settled science. But none of the laboratory reports can tell us what it felt like to be that priest. A man standing at an altar 13 centuries ago, already carrying doubt. History doesn't preserve his name with certainty. Tradition simply remembers him as a monk who doubted. But his story leaves behind a question that has nothing to do with microscopes. What do you do when something you've spent your entire life believing suddenly stops feeling real? Whatever you believe happened in Lanciano, the relic is still there. Today, in Italy. And Lanciano isn't the only place where extraordinary Eucharistic phenomena have been reported. Similar claims exist in other countries, and some of those stories are even stranger. So I'll leave you with one question. Not, is this proof? But this. What would it take for you to stop doubting the thing that matters most to you? Write your answer below. Even if it's just one word. If this story made you see something differently, subscribe. There's another one waiting.